17 missed calls. The police said fear wasn't proof of a crime. They said, unless he touched her, there was nothing they could do. So Olenna walked into the dark parking garage alone, gripping her keys like a weapon. She knew Marcus was waiting in the shadows. She could feel his eyes on her. But she was wrong about who was watching. When the air turned violently cold and the lights flickered overhead, it wasn't her ex-boyfriend who stepped out of the darkness. It was something else. Something with amber eyes, a voice like velvet, and a stillness that didn't belong to the living. She whispered a prayer for someone to walk her to her car. She didn't expect the Vampire King to answer. The fluorescent lights in the hospital break room buzzed with a frequency that made Olenna's teeth ache. She pressed her palms against the cold laminate table, watching condensation bead on her untouched coffee cup. Through the reinforced window, the city sprawled in darkness, its lights blurred by the kind of October drizzle that seemed to seep into bones. Her phone vibrated. Again. She didn't need to look at the screen to know. Marcus had called 17 times since her shift started at 11. The messages had evolved from pleading to angry, to something that made her skin crawl with their forced calm. *I just want to talk. I know you're working. I'll wait. You look like hell. Jennifer dropped into the chair across from her, scrubs decorated with cartoon cats that seemed obscene in their cheerfulness. He still calling? Olenna's fingers tightened around the cup. The ceramic transferred its warmth into her palms, but it couldn't touch the cold that had taken residence in her chest 3 weeks ago, when she'd found Marcus sitting in his car outside her apartment at 4 in the morning. Just sitting, watching her bedroom window. "Restraining order's not worth the paper it's printed on," she said. Her voice came out flat, practiced. She'd learned not to let the fear show. Fear gave him power, the police officer had told her, as if she could simply choose not to feel it. Jennifer's expression shifted into something between pity and frustration. "You need to tell security. They can walk you to your car. It's fine." The lie tasted metallic. "He's probably not even out there." But he was. Olenna knew it the way animals know when storms are coming, some primal instinct that bypassed logic and went straight to the brainstem. She'd felt his presence for the last 4 hours, a pressure against her awareness that made her check over her shoulder between patient rooms. The break room door opened. Tom from security poked his head in, his usually jovial face serious. "Olenna, there's a guy in the parking garage. Says he's waiting for his girlfriend. Matches the description you gave us last month." The coffee cup slipped from her fingers. It didn't break, just rolled across the table, leaving a trail of lukewarm liquid that dripped onto her lap. She didn't move to stop it. "I'll call the police," Jennifer said, already reaching for her phone. "No." Olenna stood, her legs steadier than they had any right to be. "He'll be gone before they get here. He always is." She'd played this game before. Marcus had a sixth sense for authority, vanishing into the night whenever squad cars appeared, only to resurface later with text messages asking why she was trying to ruin his life. The police had stopped responding with urgency after the third false alarm. Tom shifted his weight, uncomfortable. "I can't force him to leave if he's just sitting in his car. It's a public garage." "I know." She did know. She'd learned the exact boundaries of legal protection, had memorized the phrases, *no credible threat, no witnessed violence, no proof of intent. Marcus was careful. He'd always been careful. Her shift ended in 20 minutes. The thought of walking through that garage, past rows of concrete pillars that created 100 hiding places, made her stomach clench. She could wait, call a rideshare to pick her up at the emergency entrance. But the emergency entrance had cameras, witnesses. Marcus would just follow her home. Better to face him here, where Tom could at least see. The last 20 minutes crawled. Elena finished her charting with mechanical precision, her handwriting steady even as her pulse hammered against her throat. She changed out of her scrubs in the locker room, pulling on jeans and a sweater that suddenly felt too thin. The mirror showed her a stranger, pale skin, dark circles under eyes that had learned to look through people instead of at them. She'd been beautiful once. Marcus used to tell her that, his hands gentle on her face, before they learned to leave bruises where clothing would hide them. Jennifer met her at the staff exit. "I'm walking with you. You don't have to." "Shut up, Elena." They pushed through the heavy door together. The parking garage exhaled cold air that smelled of oil and rain. Elena's car was on the 3rd level, tucked in a corner spot she'd chosen for its proximity to the stairwell, a strategic decision that now felt like a trap. Their footsteps echoed against concrete. The overhead lights cast everything in sickly yellow, creating pools of shadow between parked vehicles. Elena's keys bit into her palm where she clutched them, one key protruding between her knuckles the way the self-defense video had shown. She saw his car first. The silver sedan idled 2 spaces from hers, exhaust ghosting in the damp air. Marcus sat in the driver's seat, his face illuminated by his phone screen. He looked up as they approached. He smiled. "Hey, Elena." His voice carried across the space between them, casual, as if they'd simply run into each other at a coffee shop. "Can we talk?" Jennifer's hand found Olena's elbow. "Keep walking." But Elena had stopped. Her legs had made the decision without consulting her brain, some part of her recognizing that running only delayed the inevitable. Marcus would be here tomorrow night, and the night after. He had time. He had patience. He had nothing but her. "Marcus, you need to leave." Her voice surprised her with its steadiness. He opened his car door, unfolded himself from the driver's seat with the same fluid grace that had first attracted her. He'd been charming once, before she'd learned that charm was just another word for control. "I just want 5 minutes." He took a step forward. 5 minutes, and I'll leave you alone. I promise." His promises were worthless. She'd collected them like stones, each one heavier than the last. She said, "Leave." Jennifer's voice shook slightly, betraying her fear. Marcus's smile didn't waver, but something shifted behind his eyes. "This doesn't concern you." The air pressure changed. Olenna felt it in her ears, a subtle pop like descending in an airplane. The temperature dropped so suddenly that her breath misted. Every instinct she possessed screamed at her to run, but her legs had turned to lead. Marcus took another step, his hand extended toward her, palm up, as if he expected her to take it. "Please," Olenna whispered. She didn't know who she was talking to. God. Maybe. The universe. Anyone who might be listening. "Someone help me." The lights flickered. When they steadied, someone stood between her and Marcus. He hadn't walked into position. He'd simply appeared, as if the shadows themselves had condensed into human form. Tall, dressed in black that seemed to absorb light, rather than reflect it. Olenna couldn't see his face, but she felt his presence like a physical force, pushing back against the fear that had paralyzed her. Marcus stumbled backward. "What the... Who are you?" The stranger turned his head slightly, not quite looking at Olenna, but acknowledging her presence. When he spoke, his voice carried centuries in its depths, each word precisely articulated, as if English were a language he'd learned long ago and never quite naturalized. The lady asked for help. A pause. "I'm answering." He stepped forward into the fluorescent light, and Olenna's breath caught. His eyes reflected the light like an animal's, amber and inhuman, pupils contracting to vertical slits before returning to something almost human. When he smiled at Marcus, his canines were just slightly too long, too sharp. "Leave," he said softly, "and don't come back." Marcus ran. The sound of Marcus's footsteps faded into the night, swallowed by distance and fear. Olena's heart hammered against her ribs so hard she thought it might crack bone. The parking lot felt emptier now, the sodium lights casting everything in sickly yellow, making the shadows between cars stretch like dark water. The stranger remained motionless, his back still to her. She could see the precise cut of his coat now, expensive fabric that moved wrong in the slight breeze, too heavy, too still. The air around him felt different, colder, like standing near an open freezer. "Thank you." Her voice came out barely above a whisper. She cleared her throat, tried again. "Thank you. I don't know what he would have. He would have hurt you." The stranger turned, and Olenna took an involuntary step back. Up close, his face was striking in a way that made her chest tighten. Sharp cheekbones, pale skin that looked like it had never seen sun, dark hair that fell to his collar. But it was his eyes that held her. Amber, yes, but deeper than that. Ancient. "He's been following you for 3 weeks. Olena's blood went cold. "How do you know that?" "Because I've been watching him." He tilted his head, studying her with an intensity that made her feel transparent. "You work night shift. Tuesday through Saturday. You take the same route home, park in the same spot. You're predictable, Miss Pask. That makes you vulnerable." She should run. Every rational cell in her brain screamed it. This man, this thing knew too much. Had been watching her, but her legs wouldn't move, and beneath the fear something else stirred. Curiosity. Relief. The strange, desperate gratitude of prey that's been saved by a larger predator. "Who are you?" "Malachi Thorne." He said it like she should recognize the name. When she didn't react, something flickered across his face. Amusement, maybe, or disappointment. "And you should go home now. Lock your doors. Windows. Don't answer if he calls." He turned to leave. "Wait." Olena's hand shot out, not quite touching his arm but close enough that she felt the cold radiating from him. "Will he come back?" Malachi looked at her hand, then at her face. The corner of his mouth lifted, not quite a smile. "No, he won't." The certainty in his voice should have comforted her. Instead, it raised the hair on her arms. "How can you be sure? Because I'll make certain of it." He stepped back, and the shadows seemed to lean toward him, eager. "Go home, Olenna." He knew her first name. She hadn't told him her first name. Before she could ask, he was gone. Not walking away. Gone. The space where he'd stood was empty. Just sodium light and asphalt, and the distant hum of traffic on the highway. Olenna stood alone in the parking lot, keys clutched in her shaking hand, and wondered if she'd imagined the whole thing. But her car door was still open, her purse still on the ground where she'd dropped it, and Marcus's cologne still hung in the air, mixing with something else now. Something that smelled like winter and old stone and darkness. She drove home with her doors locked and her radio off, checking her rear-view mirror every 30 seconds. The apartment felt too quiet. Elena moved through it, turning on every light, checking the windows, testing the locks twice. Her hands still shook. She made chamomile tea. She didn't drink, standing in her kitchen watching steam curl into nothing while her mind replayed the parking lot over and over. Those eyes. The way he'd appeared from nowhere. The absolute certainty in his voice when he'd promised Marcus wouldn't return. She pulled out her phone, typed Malachi Thorne into the search bar. Nothing. A few random social media profiles that clearly weren't him. An obituary from 1847 for a Malachi Thorne in Boston. She clicked it, skimmed the text. Died at age 32. Beloved son. Tragic circumstances. The photo was a daguerreotype, grainy and faded, but the bone structure was the same sharp cheekbones, the same intense stare, even captured in primitive photography. Elena closed the browser. Coincidence? Had to be. People shared names, looked similar. The photo was over 170 years old. She went to bed, but didn't sleep. Every sound made her flinch. The building settling, the neighbor's cat. Her own heartbeat loud in her ears. At 3 a.m., her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Her thumb hovered over the screen. Don't answer if he calls. But what if it wasn't Marcus? What if it was the hospital? An emergency? Jennifer trying to reach her. She answered. Hello? Silence. Not empty silence. Occupied silence. Someone breathing. Marcus, if this is you, it's not. Malachi's voice, smooth and dark as velvet. I wanted to make sure you got home safely. Olenna sat up, heart racing. How did you get my number? Does it matter? A pause. Your door locks are inadequate. The one on your bedroom window doesn't engage properly. You should have that fixed. She looked at her bedroom window. Curtains drawn. 3rd floor. No fire escape. Are you watching my apartment right now? I'm watching over you. There's a difference. Something in his tone softened, just slightly. He called you 17 times tonight. Sent 43 messages. He's escalating. Elena's mouth went dry. She'd turned her phone to silent. Hadn't checked. Didn't want to see. What do you want from me? Nothing. The word came too quickly. Then quieter. To keep you safe. Why? The silence stretched so long, she thought he'd hung up. Then because no one kept her safe. And I've had a very long time to regret that. Before she could ask who he meant, the line went dead. She called in sick the next night, and the night after that. Jennifer texted her worried messages that Elena answered with vague excuses about a stomach bug. The truth was, she couldn't face that parking lot, couldn't walk through those sliding doors knowing Marcus might be waiting. On the 3rd night, someone knocked on her door. Elena froze on her couch, tea going cold in her hands. It was past midnight. No one visited at midnight. Elena, Malachi's voice muffled through the door. I know you're awake. She should not open that door. Should call the police, call Jennifer, call anyone. Instead, she found herself walking to the door, hand on the deadbolt. How do I know you're not dangerous? A soft sound that might have been a laugh. I am dangerous, but not to you. She opened the door. He stood in the hallway, looking exactly as he had in the parking lot. Same dark coat, same ageless face. But this close, in the warm light of her apartment, she could see details she'd missed. The way his skin had no pores, no imperfections, the absolute stillness of his chest, no rise and fall of breath. The fact that when he looked at her, he didn't blink. You're not human. No. He didn't move, didn't try to come in. Just stood there waiting. May I enter? The formality of the question struck her as odd. Why are you asking permission? Because I need it. His amber eyes held hers. I can't cross your threshold uninvited. Old rules, they still apply. Vampire. The word formed in her mind with crystalline clarity. Every detail suddenly made horrible sense. The cold, the stillness, the way he'd appeared from shadows, those eyes catching light like an animal's. She should slam the door, should scream, should do anything except what she did. Come in. He stepped across the threshold, and Elena felt the air pressure change, like a storm front moving through. He moved into her small living room, taking in details with that same intense focus. The stack of nursing textbooks, the half-dead succulent on the windowsill, the photo of her parents on the shelf. "You're wondering if I'm going to hurt you." He turned to face her. "I'm not. I don't feed on humans anymore. Haven't for decades, anymore." Elena's voice sounded distant to her own ears. "But you did. You killed people." "Yes." No hesitation, no excuse. "I was made in 1847. I spent the first century as a monster, the second learning to be something else." The obituary: died at age 32. Tragic circumstances. You were murdered. Turned. He moved to her window, looked out at the street below. "There's a difference, though it didn't feel like one at the time. I was left to figure out what I'd become on my own. Made mistakes. Terrible ones. His reflection didn't show in the glass. I can't undo those, but I can prevent new ones." "Marcus," Olenna wrapped her arms around herself. "What did you do to him?" "Nothing permanent." Malachi turned from the window. "I followed him home. Explained very clearly what would happen if he contacted you again. Showed him enough to make him believe me." His expression darkened. "He's left the state. Won't be back." "You threatened him." "I terrified him." No apology in his voice. "He was going to hurt you, Elena. I could smell the violence on him. The obsession. Men like him don't stop on their own. They escalate until someone stops them." She should feel relieved, should feel safe. Instead, she felt the ground shifting under her feet, reality rearranging itself into something unrecognizable. "Why me? Why do you care what happens to me?" Malachi went very still. When he spoke, his voice carried weight, centuries of it. "You remind me of someone. The way you move through the world trying to help people, even when you're exhausted, even when they don't deserve it." He looked away. "She was a nurse too. During the Civil War, I couldn't save her." "What happened?" "I was newly turned, didn't understand what I was yet. She found me in a field hospital, thought I was wounded." His jaw tightened. "I was so hungry, and she smelled like lavender and kindness, and everything I'd lost. I tried to leave. She followed. Insisted on helping." A pause. "Someone else found her first. Another vampire, older, crueler. He killed her because she'd seen too much. Because she was in the wrong place." Olena's throat tightened. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. It was 170 years ago," but his voice said otherwise. "I've been looking for her in every kind face since, trying to protect what I couldn't protect." "Then, it's pathological probably. Definitely obsessive. But it's what I am now." He moved toward the door, and Olenna realized she didn't want him to leave. Didn't want to be alone in her apartment, with its inadequate locks and third-floor window that didn't engage properly. "Wait." She took a step toward him. "Is Marcus really gone?" Malachi's expression shifted, something predatory sliding behind his eyes before he controlled it. "You're lying." The certainty hit her like cold water. "What did you really do to him?" The silence stretched between them, thick and dangerous. Outside, a siren wailed in the distance. The refrigerator hummed. Olena's pulse beat in her throat. "He's alive." Malachi's voice had gone flat, carefully neutral. "But he won't remember you. Won't remember the last 6 months. I had a friend alter his memories, send him somewhere new to start over. It's cleaner that way. Kinder even." "You can do that, change memories?" "I can't. But I know people who can." He met her eyes. "There are more of us than you'd think. We have systems, rules, ways of handling problems without leaving bodies. Bodies. The word hung in the air. But you could have killed him. Not a question. Yes, simple, honest. Would you have wanted me to? Olenna thought about Marcus's hands on her arm, his messages, the fear that had become her constant companion. Part of her, a dark secret part she didn't like to acknowledge, whispered yes. No, she said instead. No, I wouldn't want that. Malachi studied her face, and she had the uncomfortable feeling he could hear the lie. You're a terrible liar. But you're a good person. That's rare. He opened the door. I'll be close. If you need me, just say my name. I'll hear it. That's not creepy at all. The corner of his mouth lifted. I'm a vampire, Olenna. Creepy is part of the job description. He stepped into the hallway, then paused. For what it's worth, I'm glad you're safe. Sleep well. He was gone before she could respond. The hallway empty, except for the flickering fluorescent light and the faint scent of winter. Olenna closed the door, engaged all 3 locks, and stood in her quiet apartment trying to process what her life had become. A vampire was protecting her. Marcus was gone, memory wiped, sent away like a problem solved, and she felt safer than she had in months. She should be horrified, should be planning to move, to run, to hide from the supernatural world that had suddenly revealed itself. Instead, she went to bed and slept dreamlessly for the first time in weeks. She returned to work on Tuesday. Jennifer hugged her in the break room, relief evident on her face. God, I was worried. You never call in sick. Just needed a few days. Olenna poured coffee she didn't want, needing something to do with her hands. I'm fine now. Did something happen? You seem different. Different. That was one word for it. Olenna thought about Malachi's amber eyes, his careful stillness, the way he'd promised to keep her safe. Just stress. It's handled. The shift passed in its usual chaos. Traumas and overdoses, and a cardiac arrest in room 7 that they managed to bring back. Olenna moved through it all, with practiced efficiency, but part of her mind stayed elsewhere, stayed on the parking lot, on the man, the vampire, who'd stepped between her and danger. At 3 a.m., during a rare quiet moment, she found herself at the window looking out at the parking lot. The sodium lights cast their sickly glow. A few cars scattered across the asphalt. Empty, except it wasn't empty. She could feel him out there, watching, keeping his promise. You okay? Jennifer appeared beside her with a tablet. You've been staring out there for 5 minutes. Yeah, just thinking. Olenna turned away from the window. What do you need? The rest of the shift blurred past. When 7 a.m. finally came, Olenna gathered her things slowly, checking her phone. No messages from Marcus, no unknown numbers, just a text from her mom about Thanksgiving plans and a reminder about her dentist appointment. Normal. Everything was normal. She walked to her car as dawn broke over the parking lot, painting everything in shades of pink and gold. No shadows, no cold spots, no Malachi, but tucked under her windshield wiper was a single white card. Heavy stock, expensive. Just a phone number written in precise old-fashioned script. Olenna picked it up, ran her thumb over the embossed surface. No name, no message, just the number and a small symbol in the corner, a crescent moon. She got in her car, locked the doors, and sat there holding the card as the sun climbed higher. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. The same number from the card. She asked, "You're supposed to be asleep." Malachi's voice, warm despite the topic. "Vampires can't be out in daylight. I'm old enough to manage a few hours, and I wanted to make sure you got to your car safely. It's daylight. I'm safe. From sunlight, yes. From everything else? A pause. The world is full of monsters, Olenna. Not all of them burn. She looked around the parking lot. Early morning traffic on the highway. A few nurses heading in for day shift. Everything normal. Everything safe. Thank you, she said quietly. For the card. For everything. Keep it close. If you need me, call. I'll answer. His voice dropped lower. And Olenna? Marcus isn't the only threat I've been watching. There are others. Things I need to tell you. But not yet. Not until you're ready. The line went dead. Olenna sat in her car as the sun rose higher, card clutched in her hand, and realized with perfect clarity that her life had just become infinitely more complicated. And somewhere in the growing daylight, she could have sworn she heard him whisper her name. 3 nights later, Olenna stood in front of her bathroom mirror, applying lipstick with hands that wouldn't quite steady. The card sat on the counter beside her phone. She'd memorized the number by now, though she hadn't called it again. Malachi had called her instead. Twice. Once to tell her Marcus had been dealt with, his voice carrying an edge that made her throat tight. Once to ask if she'd meet him tonight at an address in the old quarter, the part of the city where cobblestones still lined the streets and gas lamps flickered in wrought iron brackets. There are people who need to meet you, he'd said. People who will decide what happens next. She'd known what he meant. The council, the elders, whatever ancient tribunal governed creatures that shouldn't exist. The lipstick went on crooked. She wiped it off, started again. Jennifer had noticed her distraction at work. You seeing someone? She'd asked, eyebrows raised with that particular brand of hope that came from watching too many of your friends stay single too long. It's complicated, Olenna had said, which was possibly the understatement of the century. Now she stood in a black dress she'd bought that afternoon, simple, elegant, the kind of thing you wore when you needed armor that looked like silk. Her pulse hammered against her collarbone. She touched the spot, felt the heat of her own blood just beneath the surface. The address led her to a building that looked abandoned from the outside. Brick facade, windows dark, the kind of place the city council kept threatening to demolish. But when she pushed open the heavy door, warmth spilled out. Candlelight, the scent of old wood and older stone. Malachi waited in the foyer, dressed in black that made him look like he'd stepped out of another century. His eyes found hers immediately, and something in her chest loosened and tightened all at once. You came, he said. You asked. He moved toward her, stopped just close enough that she could feel the coolness radiating from him. What I'm about to show you, what you're about to hear, it may change how you see me. I've seen you drink blood from a man's throat, she said quietly. I've watched you move faster than physics should allow. What else is there? His smile was sad. Context. History. The weight of choices made over centuries. He offered his arm. They're waiting. She took it. His skin was cool through the fabric of his sleeve, solid and real. They walked down a corridor, lined with portraits, faces from different eras, all with that same quality of stillness, that same predatory grace in their painted eyes. The chamber at the end was circular, carved from stone that looked older than the city itself. 7 figures sat in high-backed chairs, arranged in a semicircle. Olenna recognized Silas immediately, his bulk unmistakable even in the flickering light. The others were strangers, 3 women, 3 men, all beautiful in that terrible, timeless way. The woman in the center spoke first. Her voice carried the weight of centuries, each word precisely chosen. Malachi Thorne, You stand accused of breach of the first law. You have revealed our nature to a human without sanction. You have placed our entire community at risk for the sake of one mortal life." Elena's hand tightened on Malachi's arm. He didn't look at her, but she felt the tension in his muscles, the coiled readiness of something ancient and dangerous forced into stillness. "I stand accused," he said simply. "The human stands before us." Another elder, male, his face sharp as broken glass. Olenna, night shift nurse, 37 years old. No family, no significant attachments. He said it like reading a death certificate. "The law is clear. Humans who learn our secret must be turned or eliminated. There is no third option." The floor seemed to tilt beneath her feet. Malachi's arm turned to iron under her grip. "There is always a third option," Malachi said, his voice low and deadly. "Memory alteration, relocation, binding oaths. We've used them before, for humans who stumbled upon us by accident," the central elder said. "Not for those deliberately exposed, not for those you've claimed as protected." The word hung in the air like smoke. Protected. Olenna felt the weight of it, the implications spiraling out in directions she couldn't quite grasp. "I claim nothing," Malachi said. "I state fact. Marcus Chen would have killed her. I intervened. The exposure was unavoidable. You could have compelled her to forget." Silas spoke for the first time, his voice gentler than Olenna expected. "You have that power. You chose not to use it." Silence. The candles flickered, casting shadows that moved like living things across the ancient stone. "I chose not to use it." Malachi agreed. "Why?" The central elder leaned forward. "In 800 years you have never broken this law. You have enforced it. You have killed to protect it. Why now? Why her?" Olenna felt every eye in the chamber turn to her. Her pulse roared in her ears. She thought about staying silent, about letting Malachi handle this. But these were his people, his world, and he was standing here facing judgment because of her. She stepped forward, breaking contact with his arm. The cold of the chamber bit into her skin. "Because I saw him," she said. Her voice sounded too loud in the stillness, too human. "Not what he is. Who he is. I saw him save me when he could have walked away. I saw him spare Marcus when killing would have been easier. I saw him choose mercy over expedience, humanity over instinct." She looked at the elders, meeting each ancient gaze in turn. "You ask why he broke your law. Maybe because your law doesn't account for the possibility that some humans might be worth the risk, that some connections might matter more than rules written when the world was different." The central elder's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. "You speak of connection, of worth. Tell me, Elena, do you understand what you're asking? If we allow you to live with this knowledge, you become bound to our world. Every vampire in this city will know your face, your scent, your status as protected. You will never be fully human again. Never be fully safe, never be able to walk away. I'm a night shift nurse," Elena said. "I stopped being fully safe the moment I chose this career. I stopped walking away from hard things a long time ago." Malachi made a sound low in his throat. When she glanced at him, his eyes were burning with something that made her breath catch. The elders conferred in silence, their gazes meeting and holding in some wordless communication that predated language. Minutes stretched. The candles burned lower. Elena's legs began to ache, but she refused to shift her weight. Finally, the central elder spoke. "Malachi Thorne, your breach of law is acknowledged. Your reasoning is noted. Your history of service is considered." She paused. The human may live, but she is now your responsibility. Her safety, her silence, her integration into our world, all of it falls to you. Should she betray us, should she expose us, the consequences will be yours to bear. Understood, Malachi said immediately. And you? The elder's gaze fixed on Olenna. You will be marked. All of our kind will know you are under Thorne's protection. This mark is permanent, irreversible. Do you accept? Olenna's throat was dry. What kind of mark? Nothing visible to human eyes. A scent marker. Vampires will smell it on you. They will know to leave you untouched. She thought about what that meant. Walking through the world carrying the scent of something inhuman, being marked as belonging to a world she'd only just discovered existed. She thought about Malachi's voice on the phone, warm and careful, about the way he'd stood between her and Marcus without hesitation, about the loneliness she'd heard beneath his words when he'd spoken of centuries. I accept, she said. The marking was quick, almost anticlimactic. The central elder approached, pressed cool fingers to Olenna's throat just above her pulse. A sensation like ice water spreading through her veins. Then nothing. It was done. The elders dismissed them without ceremony. Malachi led her back through the corridor, past the painted eyes of his ancestors or colleagues or whatever they were. Neither of them spoke until they reached the street. The night air hit her like a blessing. Olenna sucked in a breath, felt her lungs expand, felt the realness of the world around her. Streetlights, distant traffic, the smell of rain coming. You didn't have to speak, Malachi said quietly. You could have stayed silent. So could you. 800 years ago, apparently. She looked at him. Why didn't you compel me to forget? He was quiet for a long moment. When he finally answered, his voice was raw. Because for the first time in centuries, someone looked at me and saw a person instead of a monster. Because you weren't afraid when you should have been. Because you asked if I was all right. He turned to face her fully. Because I'm tired, Olenna. Tired of being alone. Tired of pretending that immortality is the same as living. Her heart was doing complicated things in her chest. What happens now? Now. He smiled, and it was real, unguarded. Now I teach you about my world. Now you decide how much of it you want to be part of. Now we figure out what this is between us, without tribunals or threats or stalkers forcing our hands. Exiled to a city far from here, with very clear instructions about what will happen if he ever comes near you again. His eyes darkened. He won't. I made certain of that. She didn't ask for details, didn't need them. Walk with me. Malachi offered his hand. She took it. His fingers were cool, strong, steady. They walked through the old quarter as the first drops of rain began to fall, and Elena realized she wasn't afraid. Not of him, not of his world, not of whatever came next. Above them, the sky opened up, and the rain came down in sheets, washing the streets clean.